In a quiet, far-off corner of the galaxy, life moved slowly. The human colony on the planet, Hera, was small, peaceful, and mostly forgotten by the rest of the universe. Alex lived there, working as a ship engineer. He was an average man, not much different from the others who lived among the colony's farms, workshops, and simple homes. Yet, Alex was about to be swept into something far bigger than himself. Alex had always kept to himself. He wasn't one for grand dreams or wild adventures. His life was simple: wake up, fix ships, help out at the colony, and return home to his small cabin. But all of that was about to change with one message. It started like any other day. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the fields when Alex's communicator buzzed. At first, he didn't think much of it. The colony didn't get many visitors, and his work was mostly solitary. But when he checked the message, his heart skipped a beat. The message was from the galactic Empress, the most powerful and feared being in the galaxy. "I challenge you, human. You have two choices. Fight me or love me. Choose wisely." Alex stared at the message in shock. The galactic Empress? A woman known across the universe for her strength, intelligence, and ruthless rule? Why was she sending a challenge to a simple engineer like him? It didn't make sense. His mind raced. Was this some kind of joke? A test? Or had something gone terribly wrong? He sat there staring at the message for what felt like hours. Fight her? He was no soldier. Love her? How could someone like him even begin to think about something so impossible? But deep down, something told him he couldn't ignore it. This wasn't a random message. The Empress had chosen him for a reason. The thought of rejecting the challenge crossed his mind, but that would mean defying the Empress herself. The very idea sent shivers down his spine. The consequences of disobeying her were legendary. Many had tried to defy her, and none had lived to tell the tale. Then a strange thought hit him. What if there was another way? What if, instead of fighting her with violence, there was another choice? He wasn't a warrior, but he wasn't powerless either. He had a deep understanding of people, emotions, and connection. Could that be his weapon? Alex shook his head, trying to make sense of it. He had no answers, only questions. But one thing was certain. This was his only chance to understand why the Empress had chosen him. And maybe, just maybe, there was more to this challenge than a simple fight. He stood up, deciding. He had to know. He couldn't walk away from this. The Empress would come to him soon enough, and he would have to face whatever was coming. The journey to the Empress's ship was not what Alex had imagined. He thought he would be taken by force or dragged into a battle. But instead, he found himself traveling on a small, sleek transport ship, far more comfortable than anything he had ever seen on Hera. The stars outside the window sparkled, and for the first time in his life, Alex felt small in the vastness of space. The ship traveled quickly, faster than anything Alex had ever ridden. It wasn't long before he saw it. The Empress's flagship. It was a massive, floating fortress, a ship of unimaginable size with sleek black metal and sharp angles. The ship seemed alive, its design both beautiful and terrifying. As Alex's transport ship approached, a sense of awe washed over him. The Empress's flagship wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of power and dominance. Alex couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to stand in the presence of such a powerful being. Would she be as cold and distant as the legends said? Or was there something more to her? He stepped off the transport ship, and before him stood the entrance to the Empress's domain. The doors slid open with a low hum, revealing a vast hall. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. A palace made of dark stone and shimmering lights, with towering pillars and walls adorned with strange symbols he couldn't read. He was met by two guards, tall and imposing, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. They said nothing as they escorted him through the hall, past grand displays of alien technology and artifacts. Everything in the palace seemed to hold an aura of mystery, as if the ship itself had a secret to tell. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the ship. The doors opened and Alex stepped inside. And there she was, the Empress, She stood tall, her presence commanding. Her beauty was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Her skin was a soft, pale lavender. Her eyes, a brilliant gold, and her hair flowed like liquid silver. She was dressed in armor that shimmered in the light, a symbol of both strength and elegance. But it was her eyes that held him captive. There was something in them, something both powerful and lonely, that Alex couldn't quite understand. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Alex didn't know what to say. The silence stretched between them, heavy with tension. He could feel her gaze on him, assessing him. Finally, the Empress spoke. "Well, human," she said, her voice smooth like silk, yet with a strength that sent a shiver down Alex's spine. "You've come. Now choose. Fight me, or love me." Her words hung in the air, and Alex could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This was no ordinary challenge. It was a test of his very being. And yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Alex felt a strange calm. He wasn't a warrior. He didn't know how to fight like the heroes in the stories. But he knew one thing. He had a heart. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. "I choose love," Alex said, his voice steady, though his heart raced in his chest. "I choose to show you that there is more to life than strength and power. I choose to love you." The Empress's eyes widened, her expression unreadable. For a moment she said nothing, as if she was trying to understand his words. Then, slowly, she smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile. But it was enough to make Alex's heart race even faster. "Very well, human," she said, her tone softer than before. "You have chosen your path. Let us see if your love is enough to face what lies ahead." With that, the challenge had begun. The journey Alex had chosen was not one of battles and swords, but one of heart and trust. And as he looked into the Empress's eyes, he realized that this was only the beginning. The vastness of the Empress's ship was overwhelming. As Alex walked deeper into her domain, he couldn't help but feel like an insignificant speck in the middle of something much larger than himself. The corridor stretched on endlessly, adorned with strange symbols and alien artifacts that seemed to pulse with an energy Alex couldn't comprehend. Every step he took felt like it echoed in the cold, metallic silence of the ship. Despite the awe-inspiring surroundings, Alex's focus was entirely on the woman who stood before him, the Empress. Her presence was undeniable. It was as if the very air shifted when she entered a room, and Alex could feel the weight of her power bearing down on him. And yet, there was something more. Beneath her armor and regal appearance, there was a softness in her eyes that Alex hadn't expected. It was almost human. "Follow me," the Empress commanded, her voice firm yet strangely gentle. Her words were not a request but a declaration. Alex had no choice but to obey. They walked in silence for a while, passing through the endless halls of the ship. The sound of their footsteps was the only thing that broke the quiet, a soft echo that seemed to resonate in the vastness of the ship. Alex stole occasional glances at her, unsure of what to say. Her silence was both intimidating and comforting, as though she were waiting for him to prove himself. The Empress led him to a large circular room at the heart of the ship. The walls were made of shimmering metal, and the floor was covered in a soft alien carpet that seemed to shift colors as they walked across it. At the center of the room was a large chair, surrounded by several smaller seats. "Sit," she instructed, gesturing to the chair. Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure if he was meant to be a guest or a prisoner, but he followed her instructions and sat down. He noticed that the chair was strangely comfortable, as if designed specifically for someone of his size, though everything about the room seemed designed for someone much taller and more imposing than him. The Empress stood by the chair, looking down at him. Her golden eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, Alex felt the weight of her gaze like a physical force. It was a gaze that seemed to see through him, as if she could understand everything about him in an instant. It made him uneasy. Why? Did you choose love? She asked, her voice softer now, almost curious. Alex felt his heart race. This was the moment. The question he had been dreading. He had chosen love because deep down, he believed that was the only way to reach her. He wasn't a warrior. He couldn't match her strength or power. But love was something he could offer. I chose love because it's the one thing I can offer you that no one else can, Alex said, his voice steady despite the nervousness that threatened to overwhelm him. I don't know what you've been through, Empress, but I know that love is real. It's not just something to control or use as a weapon. It's something pure, something that can connect us. The Empress seemed to consider his words for a long time. Her expression was unreadable, and Alex couldn't tell if she was impressed or disappointed. Finally, she spoke again. You speak of love as if it's a choice, she said, her voice colder now. But I've never had the luxury of choosing love. I am the ruler of an empire, a conqueror. Love is a weakness, something that can be used against you. It's a burden, not a blessing. Alex felt a pang of sadness in his chest. The Emmy. The days passed quickly aboard the Empress's ship, each one feeling like a strange dream. Alex found himself in a world unlike any he had ever known. The vast halls of the ship, the advanced technology, and the alien creatures that moved about. Everything was a constant reminder that he was far from home, far from the life he knew. But it wasn't the grandeur of the ship that held his attention. It was the Empress. Despite her cold exterior and the power she wielded, Alex knew there was more beneath. The surface. She had chosen him for a reason, and that reason was something he was determined to understand. He spent his days working on tasks assigned to him, but there was always a part of his mind that returned to the Empress. Every time they spoke, he learned a little more about her, a little more about the person behind the crown. It wasn't easy. Her walls were high, and she was careful with her words. But Alex could see the small cracks in those walls, the moments when her guard slipped, even if only for a second. One evening after a long day of work, Alex found himself walking through the hallways trying to clear his mind. He had been given a new task, one that would take him deeper into the ship, to the very heart of the Empress's domain. The room he was heading to was said to contain the ship's core systems, the very heart of the massive vessel. As he walked, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway behind him. He turned, and to his surprise, the Empress was walking beside him. She was silent, her eyes focused ahead, but her presence was enough to fill the space around them. I didn't expect to see you here, Alex said, his voice gentle, though he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. The Empress didn't reply immediately. Instead, she glanced at him, her golden eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lights overhead. I find myself needing to understand you, Alex, she said, her voice low. You are unlike anyone I've ever met. You've shown me a side of myself I never thought I would see, and yet I am still unsure if you truly understand what you are asking. Alex stopped walking, turning to face her. What do you mean? You speak of love, she said, her voice almost a whisper. But love is a dangerous thing, Alex. It is not something you simply choose. It is something that takes hold of you, something that can destroy you if you are not careful. Alex felt a pang of frustration, but he kept his voice calm. I understand that love can be painful, but it's also what makes us human. It's what makes life worth living. Without it, we're just surviving. We're not really living. The Empress looked at him for a long time, as if weighing his words. For a moment, Alex saw something flicker in her eyes. A trace of doubt, maybe, or the beginning of a crack in her armor. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. You have much to learn, Alex, she said softly. Love is not something I have ever known. It is not something that I can simply accept. I have lived too long without it, and I have seen what happens when it is given away too freely. Alex could feel the weight of her words. He knew there was more to her story, more than she was willing to share. But he also knew that he couldn't give up. Not now, not after everything they had already been through. You don't have to do this alone. Alex said, his voice filled with sincerity. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to let your past define your future. You have the power to choose, Empress. You can choose love if you want to. The Empress paused, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, the silence between them was thick, almost tangible. Then, without warning, she turned and continued walking down the hall. Follow me, she said, her voice tinged with something Alex couldn't quite place. He followed her, curiosity building in his chest. Where was she taking him? What was she about to show him? They walked in silence for a while, the only sound the soft hum of the ship's engines. They arrived at a large circular room at the center of the ship, its walls lined with strange, glowing symbols. In the middle of the room stood a large platform, and upon it was a figure, a statue perhaps, or a living being. Alex couldn't tell. The Empress stepped forward, her hand outstretched. This is the heart of the ship, she said quietly. It is also the heart of my empire. It is where everything begins and ends. Alex took a step closer, his eyes widening in awe. The figure on the platform was not a statue at all. It was a person, or rather, an alien being suspended in a strange, glowing energy. The being's face was serene, almost peaceful, but its body was frozen in time, as if trapped between two worlds. What? What is this? Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Empress turned to face him, her expression unreadable. This is my past, she said softly. This is my greatest loss. Alex looked at her confused. I don't understand. The Empress took a deep breath, her gaze drifting toward the suspended figure. This is a being I once loved, she said, her voice filled with a quiet sadness. He was my partner, my equal. Together we ruled the stars, built an empire that no one could challenge, but he betrayed me. He chose power over love. And in the end, I was forced to make a choice. I had to choose between him and everything I had built, and so I sealed him away, forever trapped in this place. Alex's heart ached as he listened to her story. He could see the pain in her eyes, the weight of the decision she had made so long ago. This was the reason she had pushed love away. This was the reason she was so afraid of it. I didn't know, Alex said quietly. I didn't know you had been through something like this. The Empress turned to him, her eyes softening just a little. No one does, she said. No one could ever understand the weight of ruling an empire, of having everything and losing it all in an instant. Alex stepped closer to her, his heart filled with empathy. He could see the cracks in her armor, the pain she had carried for so long. You don't have to carry this burden alone anymore, he said, his voice gentle. I'm here. I'm not going to leave you. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. For the first time since Alex had arrived, the Empress's eyes seemed to soften, just a little. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time, as if beginning to believe in the possibility of something different. You truly mean that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex nodded. I do. The Empress looked at him for a long time, and for a moment, Alex thought she might say something more, but instead, she turned away, her eyes drifting back to the suspended figure on the platform. Perhaps you are right, she said quietly. Perhaps love is not a weakness. The days aboard the Empress's ship seemed to blend into one another. Alex found himself slowly becoming accustomed to the strange and unfamiliar surroundings, but no matter how hard he tried, the thought of what he had chosen, the choice to love the Empress, still felt daunting. Every day, he faced new challenges, and every night the weight of her past seemed to rest heavily on his mind. He knew that in order for them to move forward, he would need to continue proving his commitment. But the road ahead was unclear. After the incident in the heart of the ship, Alex found that the Empress had become more distant once again. She would still speak to him, still offer brief moments of kindness, but there was something different. Her eyes, once open and vulnerable, were now guarded again. She seemed torn between the emotions he had awoken in her and the responsibility of ruling her vast empire. One evening, as Alex was working in the ship's engineering bay, he noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The ship's hull seemed quieter, as if the very air had become thick with anticipation. He felt it too, the sense that something was coming, something that might change everything. He was still trying to adjust when a sharp, authoritative voice broke the silence. "Alex," the Empress called from the doorway. Her presence was commanding even from across the room. "I need to speak with you." He turned around, meeting her gaze. Her golden eyes were fixed on him, and for a moment he couldn't tell if she was angry, confused, or simply lost in thought. "Of course, Your Majesty," Alex replied, walking toward her. "What is it?" Without waiting for an answer, she motioned for him to follow her. Alex had grown used to following her orders, but this time, there was a sense of urgency in her steps. He followed her down the ship's corridors, the faint hum of the engines reverberating through the walls. They passed through several rooms, before entering a smaller chamber, one Alex had never seen before. It was a stark contrast to the grand halls of the ship. The room was simple, dark, with a single large table at its center surrounded by high-backed chairs. The Empress motioned for him to sit, and he did, taking a seat across from her. She stood for a moment, her back turned toward him as she gazed. Out of the small circular window in the room, her eyes focused on the stars outside. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, like the weight of the galaxy itself pressing in on them. Alex waited, not knowing what to say. He had become accustomed to her silence, to her moments of contemplation, but this was different. This felt like something more, a turning point, a decision waiting to be made. Finally, the Empress spoke, her voice quiet but filled with an intensity that made Alex's heart race. "I have come to a decision," she said, her voice steady. "You and I, whatever this is between us, it cannot continue." Alex's breath caught in his throat. He had expected her to push him away, but hearing it out loud was something entirely different. For a moment, he'd die after all. "Perhaps it is, something I have been running from for too long." The ship hummed softly as Alex sat in a small lounge area, gazing out at the stars. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before him, a reminder of how small he was in the grand scheme of things. Yet for the first time since arriving on the Empress's ship, he didn't feel insignificant. There was a purpose to his presence now, one that was growing stronger with each passing day. He had been with the Empress for weeks now. They had shared countless moments, some quiet, some filled with conversation, and some spent in silence. Slowly, the walls between them had crumbled, and Alex was no longer just a human engineer in her employ. He had become her confidant, her friend, and in many ways her anchor. The Empress had changed too. She was still the powerful ruler of an empire, still fierce and unyielding in her duty. But now, when Alex looked at her, he saw more than just a queen. He saw a woman who was learning to trust again, a woman who had begun to open her heart to the possibility of love. But the path they walked was not an easy one. The challenges that lay ahead were more complex than Alex had ever imagined, and he knew that the journey they had begun would not be without obstacles. The Empress's position as ruler of a galaxy-spanning empire meant that every decision she made had far-reaching consequences. Love for her was not something that could be taken lightly. One evening, as they sat in the quiet of the ship's observation room, the Empress spoke. "Alex," she said softly, her voice tinged with an unfamiliar vulnerability. "There are things I have not shared with you, things I've been running from for a long time." Alex looked at her, his heart heavy with the knowledge that there was still more to her story that she had not revealed. He knew she had been hurt, betrayed, and scarred in ways that he couldn't yet understand. But he also knew that her heart had begun to open, if only just a little, and that was something he would not take for granted. "You don't have to tell me everything," Alex said gently. "I'm not asking for that, but if you want to share, I'm here." The Empress turned to him, her eyes searching his face for a moment before she nodded slowly. She seemed to gather her thoughts, as if weighing how much she should reveal. "I was not always this way," she began, her voice steady. though there was a sadness behind her words. Once I loved freely. I had someone, a partner, a friend. Together we ruled this empire. We were strong, unstoppable. But then, he betrayed me. He chose power over our bond, and when I had to make a choice between him and everything I had built, I chose to sacrifice my love for the greater good of my people. Alex's heart ached as she spoke. He could hear the pain in her words, the weight of a decision made long ago that still haunted her. She had loved deeply, only to have that love torn away from her in the most painful way imaginable. Since then, she continued, I have kept myself distant from others. I thought it was the only way to protect myself, to protect my empire. But meeting you, it has made me question everything. Maybe I've been wrong all along. Maybe love isn't a weakness. Maybe it is what makes us stronger. Alex reached out, placing a hand gently over hers. He could feel the tremor in her touch, the depth of her emotion. You're not alone, Empress, Alex said softly. You never have to be alone again. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We can face the future together. The Empress looked at him, her golden eyes filled with something new, a glimmer of hope, perhaps. She squeezed his hand gently, and for a moment the weight of the galaxy seemed to lift from her shoulders. I have spent so long building walls around my heart, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But you have shown me that I don't need to hide anymore. Alex smiled, his heart swelling with warmth. I will always be here for you. Empress, you don't have to carry this burden alone. For the first time in a long while, the Empress allowed herself to lean into his touch. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as if letting go of a lifetime of pain. She had spent so many years hiding from the very thing that could have saved her, the love she had been afraid to embrace. But now, with Alex by her side, she felt like she could finally let her guard down. As they sat together in the quiet of the room, Alex knew that their relationship had reached a new level. This was no longer just a test, no longer just a challenge. It was something real, something that could change the course of both their lives. The following days were filled with moments of quiet connection. The Empress began to open up more, sharing pieces of her past that had been buried for so long. Each conversation, each shared memory, brought them closer. They spent hours talking about their hopes and dreams, their fears and regrets, and with each passing day, their bond grew stronger. But the challenges they faced were not just emotional. There were still external pressures, political tensions, rebellions, and enemies who sought to tear them apart. The Empress was still a ruler, and her decisions affected millions of lives. Her love for Alex, while genuine, also threatened the delicate balance she had worked so hard to maintain. One afternoon, as they walked through the gardens aboard the ship, a rare space of greenery in the midst of the cold, metallic walls, the Empress stopped and turned to Alex. We cannot continue this way, she said, her voice firm. I have a duty to my people, to the galaxy. I cannot allow myself to be distracted by personal feelings. If we are to move forward, we must find a way to balance my love for you with my responsibility as a ruler. Alex looked at her, his expression serious. I understand, but I believe we can have both. You don't have to choose between love and duty. We can build something stronger together. I want to be with you, not just as your partner, but as someone who will stand by you in every decision you make. The Empress looked at him, her golden eyes filled with uncertainty. It will not be easy, she said, her voice softening. There will be sacrifices. We may face enemies even within my own court, who will use our relationship against us. Alex nodded. I know, but I'm willing to face whatever comes our way. Together. The Empress hesitated for a moment, then smiled. A rare, genuine smile that softened her features. Perhaps there is a way forward, she said. Perhaps together, we can build a future that is not defined by power alone, but by love and trust. For the first time, the Empress allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the walls she had built around her heart. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would be many obstacles ahead. But with Alex by her side, she believed it was possible. The days that followed were filled with planning and difficult decisions. Alex had become not just the Empress's lover, but her closest advisor. His insights into her people, her empire, and even her own heart had become invaluable. They worked together side by side, building a vision for the future, one where love and duty could coexist. And as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the stars, Alex knew that the Empress was no longer just a ruler. She was a woman who had chosen to embrace love even in the face of overwhelming odds. She had chosen him, and together, they would face whatever came next. "I think we're ready," Alex said, looking out at the galaxy. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The Empress stood beside him, her hand in his. "Yes," she said softly. "Together." And for the first time in her life, she truly believed that it was possible to have both love and power, not as separate forces but as one, intertwined, stronger, together than apart. The days aboard the Empress's ship had turned into weeks, and Alex had never felt more certain of his place in the galaxy. What had started as a challenge, a choice between love or battle, had transformed into something profound. A connection between two souls who had once been strangers, now bound by a deeper understanding. But even as their relationship grew stronger, the challenges ahead remained formidable. The Empress, for all her power, still faced enormous pressure from within her empire. Her rule was never safe, and the decisions she made could topple entire worlds. Her growing affection for Alex was a complication, a vulnerability that her enemies would not hesitate to exploit. Despite everything, the Empress had to ask herself, could she truly have it all? Could she balance love with the responsibility of leading an empire? One evening, as they stood side by side on the observation deck, the vastness of space before them, Alex turned to the Empress. "You've come a long way," he said quietly, watching her gaze linger on the stars. "I know it hasn't been easy for you." The Empress didn't immediately reply. She gazed out at the endless void, her golden eyes reflecting the stars. She had changed so much since their first meeting. She was still the Empress, but there was something softer in her now, a strength that came from knowing love, from allowing herself to feel. "I never thought this would happen," she said after a long pause. "I never thought I could feel this way again. For so long I kept my heart locked away. But now, with you, everything feels different. I don't know what to do with it." Alex reached out and gently touched her arm. "You don't have to do anything with it, Empress. You don't have to control it. Just let it be. Let us be." The Empress turned to face him, her expression a mixture of confusion and hope. "But what if this causes problems? What if this love makes me weak?" Alex smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "You're stronger than you think. Love doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. And together we can handle whatever comes. Our way. We can face it side by side." The Empress's lips curled into a faint say,